From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin with Venezuela, where the Minister of Communication, Jorge Rodriguez, has said that the working day will be suspended to better facilitate the full restoration of the electricity service after an electromagnetic attack on the country's Guayana hydroelectric power generation system. The government said that an interruption to electricity supply was first felt at around 4:45 p.m. local time yesterday. By 10:30 p.m. local time, electricity had been restored in various neighborhoods of the capital, Caracas, including Catia, El Valle, and San Martin, among others. The communication minister explained the measures that the Bolivarian government is taking to combat the problem.
The Bolivarian government of Venezuela informs that today, at 4:45 p.m., there was a national power outage. The first-hand information received for our investigation in Bajo Caroni have showed an electromagnetic attack aimed at the hydroelectric generator system of Guayana, the country's main electric power provider. Fortunately, following the recent attacks on the power system during the months of March and April 2019, the government has implemented different protocols which allow us to affirm that we are working on reestablishing the electric connections nationwide. We have also activated through different ministries and institutions the mechanisms to provide potable water, public transportation, and health services. We have deployed security forces to guarantee the safety and peace of our population. The people responsible for these attacks will be defeated again. They will experience the courage and nerve of the sons and daughters of our liberator, Simón Bolívar. We will defeat them. Venceremos.
This latest blackout comes just hours after the country's Minister of Communication showed footage of U.S. spy planes violating Venezuela's airspace. In the footage shown by Jorge Rodriguez, taken from a Venezuelan jet, a U.S. plane can be seen clearly as it flies over Venezuela's sovereign airspace. This U.S. spy plane was intercepted by Venezuelan fighter jets on Friday, July 19th. The plane was detected by the nation's airspace defense system, and Rodriguez confirmed that it was flying without legal authorization. Just as he was presenting this information yesterday, Rodriguez announced that another spy plane was at that very moment flying over Venezuela.
At this very moment, the same airplane, or a similar one, known as the EP-30 aircraft, is once again invading our airspace near Maiquetía. At this very moment, how could any Venezuelan justify such actions? Nonetheless, we have seen the far right do this, providing justifications as for why a U.S. spy plane is illegally entering Venezuelan airspace, endangering flight paths in the region as well as our sovereignty.
In Puerto Rico, protesters are still demanding Governor Ricardo Rosselló's resignation, despite his assertions that he won't continue in office beyond the end of his term in 2020. The Bar Association of Puerto Rico has said there is enough support in the island legislature to force the exit of the governor. Trade unions and civil society organizations added their weight to the protests, and police have also urged his exit for their own safety. At least 14 people have been injured by police repression of the demonstrations so far, which began over a week ago. We spoke to Heriberto Martinez, the incoming president of the Economists Association of Puerto Rico, about the current events in the island.
Join together in the streets and send a message to the governor of Puerto Rico, Ricardo Rosselló, that it's time to step down and present his complete resignation as the position of governor. The environment during the protests was very peaceful. Again, the idea of this activity, the idea of this mass protest was to show the world that we can be together, that we can do this peacefully, and that we can celebrate a new era in the politics of Puerto Rico. The austerity measures were focused on social investment. The University of Puerto Rico, the healthcare system, the school system in Puerto Rico, the Department of Education, but at the same time, the government was increasing the money of the public budget for private contractors. So what that means, Puerto Rico today is in a huge depression, in a social and economic situation that is very severe, and we need a new government with new politics, different and very, very far away from the austerity measures. What happened at the end? When after the Hurricane Maria, the government didn't have the money to cover all the social disaster and destruction that happened in Puerto Rico. And now we are facing a general situation in which we need the money of the welfare state on the United States and the money in Puerto Rico, the money of the Puerto Ricans on the public budget is used more for corruption than for social investment.
The president of the Dominican Republic, Danilo Medina, has announced that he won't modify the country's constitution to be able to re-election in 2020 for the third time. This comes after months of protests against the constitutional reform.
When I reach the end of my second term and leave my post as president, I want to be able to go on the streets and walk like an average citizen, and look people in the eye with the peace of mind of someone who fulfilled his duty with honesty and humility.
The Prime Minister of Haiti, Jean-Michel Lapon, has resigned after failing to form a government. Lapon said he had sent his resignation to President Jovenel Moïse and said that he had made the decision for Haiti. Since he was appointed in March, Lapon has been unable to get his political program passed by the Senate. President Moïse appointed Fritz William Michel, a former executive in the Ministry of Economy and Finance, as Lapon's replacement. Coming up, Boris Johnson will be the next UK Prime Minister, and we'll look at what that means for the Brexit process. Don't go away.
From here to beyond the South. From here to the Caribbean or further north. Where can I see news connecting the whole South? From Washington. From Mexico. From Caracas. From Quito. From Havana. You can always see the news from a new vision, connecting the global South. Only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Boris Johnson will take the mantle of British Prime Minister from Theresa May after winning the Conservative Party's leadership contest. Johnson took 66% of the vote against his rival Jeremy Hunt in an internal election heavily criticized as undemocratic and unrepresentative. Unlike in a general election, only members of the Conservative Party participated to choose who would lead the United Kingdom. The Conservative Party membership has an average age of 57. Around 160,000 votes were cast, with Johnson's support limited to fewer than 100,000 people.
We're going to get Brexit done on October the 31st. We're going to take advantage of all the opportunities that it will bring in a new spirit of can-do. And we are once again going to believe in ourselves and what we can achieve. And like some slumbering giant, we are going to rise and ping off the guy ropes of self-doubt and negativity.
But a number of high-profile ministers, including Finance Minister Philip Hammond, have announced their intention to resign before Johnson takes office, in protest at his intention to take the UK out of the European Union without a deal. The Conservative Party remains split on Europe, despite ostensibly being the party of the Brexit. And for more on Britain's new leader-to-be, we are joined by teleSUR's political analyst Tariq Ali. Hello, Tariq. Can you remind us what Boris Johnson represents for him, for the country, and for the party?
Well, I mean, the first point to make, and to stress this point, because the BBC is tending to underplay and ignore it, that this is not some giant historic moment. This is the Conservative Party. Its members form the electorate. They have elected Boris as leader. He has not been elected by the country. And the Conservatives are now in the habit of doing this, changing prime ministers in midstream and then going to the country. The only interesting thing now is how long before Boris is forced to go to the country and seek a mandate from the people. That will depend on how the Conservative Party weathers the storm. Brexit, of course, is the key issue. If Boris goes for a no-deal Brexit, which some of his supporters want, he will lose the confidence of many Conservatives who could then vote against him in Parliament, triggering a general election. If he doesn't go for a no-deal Brexit, but effectively accepts a slightly amended version of Theresa May, his predecessor's deal with the EU, the hardcore Brexiters will give him a lot of trouble. So I think what we have to understand is that despite this farce and so-called show of unity, the Conservative Party, the traditional ruling class party of Britain, is deeply split and divided. And 51% of Boris's supporters in the Conservative Party have said they want a no-deal Brexit, they will go with him, and if the Conservative Party splits, so be it. So it's nothing for him to boast about. The other thing he is promising is to defeat Jeremy Corbyn. And I have to say this, that the coverage on the BBC has been appalling. Instead of getting a supporter of the Labour Party leadership to take this on, they find some old Blairites who hate Corbyn almost as much as Boris Johnson and put them on the screen and then pretend that this is a sort of objective discussion. So we are in a critical situation in Britain now, and I think the only serious way forward is a general election. Will it happen this year or the following year? We don't know. But I think Boris will probably be a very short-lived prime minister.
And talking about divisions inside the same ruling party, there's a pro and anti-Brexit division. Are we still talking about an ideological difference, or is it a more political reason behind it?
Well, it is a political difference, effectively. Whether Britain decides to, Boris says, become a self-governing democratic nation. But, there's a problem here. I mean, that outside the European Union, the only power the British government will be able to rely on and be very close to is the United States. So even if Britain leaves the European Union, which it is now going to do in some shape or form, it will continue to remain a satrapy, a semi-colony of the United States, especially in terms of foreign policy, but not just foreign policy. When Trump visited Britain, he accidentally announced that they were prepared to help Britain, but he said, you've got to open up your national health service to American companies. So there's going to be trouble whatever happens. And if Scotland cannot stomach a Brexit and decides to go for independence, then that will be a huge blow to a ruling class which has known how to govern with a degree of stability now for nearly 200 years. So I think the situation here is much more serious than the media in Britain are presenting it as. It's not just about Boris Johnson, it's about the future of this country. And here, what happens in the next election is crucial. And the ruling class in Britain and its interests within the Labour Party, the right wing of the Labour Party, are really trying very hard to crush Corbyn, to defeat him by setting up this totally fake campaign of so-called anti-Semitism. Why are there so many anti-Semites in the Labour Party? A, there aren't that many. B, there are no more anti-Semites in the Labour Party than in the Conservative Party or the Lib Dem. Obviously, there is a degree of anti-Semitism, but to target Labour, and today's Financial Times saying that Labour is now an anti-Semitic party is one of the most disgusting editorials I have read in a serious British newspaper for a very long time. And the aim is to discredit Corbyn on the basis of a campaign which is fake and based on lies. So everything is being done to weaken Labour and basically to weaken Corbyn. And I think they hope that if Boris has to be got rid of, they will be able to form a national government with Blairite supporters in the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, and dissident Tories. That will be the way they will go about it. It's what they've done in the past, and I have no doubt that that is what they are discussing at the moment.
Indeed, and we'll keep an eye on that issue as well. Thank you, Tariq, for your time.
Thank you.
That was teleSUR's political analyst, Tariq Ali. Now, after the break, prison violence continues in Ecuador. Now, 2 prisoners are dead in one of the country's high-security jails. Stay with us.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transformed the world today. On Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. The dengue virus is sweeping through the north of Guatemala, and local health centers are unable to cope with all patients. Let's take a look at more in this report.
This is the outpatients department at the Playa Grande Health Center in Ixcanquiche. It's small and bursting at the seams. Some of the patients with dengue are being treated in the waiting room.
A lot more people are showing symptoms, fever and so on, and most of them have dengue.
This virus is infecting entire families. Most of them spent more than a week in bed as a consequence of the various symptoms.
You get itching on your arms, which leave little purple patches, as well as a very high fever. Those are the symptoms of the dengue virus.
Even voluntary firefighters have been called out to help patients with hemorrhagic dengue. But although the symptoms seem clear, the health staff can't record them as dengue cases until the central laboratory confirms them.
The patients who have symptoms such as body pains, aching bones, fever, and nose bleeding are sent to the health center.
Those tests cannot be done here. They have to be done at the central laboratory. So we are not allowed to say if it's dengue or not.
The dengue virus is transmitted by the Aedes mosquito, but the disease prevention staff don't have the equipment they need to combat it.
All we have are these 3 little sprays. They do the job more or less, but is it not enough?
The authorities have confirmed 17 deaths from dengue in Guatemala so far, but that doesn't include those who die in remote communities. The latest report from the Health Ministry says that more than 6,200 suspected cases of dengue had been recorded across the country.
A Mexican economist has accused U.S. President Donald Trump of using the migration issue as a tool for his re-election campaign. Alejandro Sandoval claims that the hardline stance taken by the Trump administration is a ploy to attract votes in the 2020 elections. Trump has made cracking down on migrants the focus of his first term in office. Thousands of U.S. troops are currently stationed at the border with Mexico to support the administration's crackdown on asylum seekers and migrants.
Finally, I think it's something that we have to get used to. Unfortunately, at least from here to the next U.S. presidential elections, the border with Mexico is going to be a tool that the U.S. president is going to play with to seek re-election. And Mexico will have to deal with it and face whatever it might come next.
A riot broke out at Ecuador's maximum security prison in La Tacunga, leaving at least 2 dead. Police have reportedly regained control after inmates seized control of the building. Images shared on social media show a number of inmates on the roof of the prison. Ecuador's former vice president Jorge has been held in this prison for the past 2 years. Information about his well-being is not yet available, but social organizations have called for his immediate transfer to a different prison as he recently received death threats. Gang violence continues to claim lives in the South African city of Cape Town, despite the deployment of the military to clamp down on violence. According to the police, 24 people, including a police officer, were killed by gangs over the weekend. The military was recently deployed to work alongside the national police in the fight against gangs. Turf wars between armed gangs in impoverished areas of the city have killed about 1,000 people since the start of the year. The ruling African National Congress has said it will allow the country's legal system to deal with the row between President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Public Protector's Office.
I don't think that we would want to enter the space at this point now. Let us allow the president to deal with these issues in the manner that he has elected to. When all of these things are done, and if there is a need for the ANC to come out and pronounce itself, the organization shall, at that point, do so. So that we don't conflate issues here. There is a public protector's report. The President of the Republic has already spoken to the nation, who's also the President of the ANC, has spoken to the nation on the sort of steps that he is undertaking. And part of those steps include a judicial review.
The President of France, Emmanuel Macron, has called on Libyan authorities to free the refugees and asylum seekers it is holding in detention camps across the country. He made the call on Monday during a meeting with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi. The appeal comes 3 weeks after more than 50 people were killed in an airstrike on a holding facility in the Libyan capital, Tripoli. Hundreds of refugees and asylum seekers are being held in detention facilities that the UN has declared unfit for humans.
I am drawing several conclusions from this situation. First, it is a specific, insistent request from France to Libyan authorities to stop the detention of migrants and refugees, which is a man-made situation on the ground.
China has condemned the United States for the use of unilateral sanctions and failure to respect the sovereign rights of other countries, saying that Washington is breaching international law. The U.S. applied sanctions on a Chinese energy firm cooperating with Iran on Monday.
The Chinese side expressed firm opposition and strong condemnation of the U.S. sanctions against Chinese companies. The Chinese side has repeatedly stressed that the international community, including China and Iran's normal energy cooperation within the framework of national development, are reasonable and legal, and must be respected and protected. The U.S. has neglected the legitimate rights of all countries and randomly applies sanctions. This is in violation of international law. We urge the U.S. to correct this wrongdoing and stop its illegal sanctions on Chinese companies and individuals. China will take all necessary measures to resolutely protect the lawful rights of Chinese companies and individuals.
The U.S. government's onslaught on Chinese technology giant Huawei has put hundreds of workers at risk of losing their jobs. The U.S.-based research division of Huawei, FutureWay Technologies, is set to retrench about 70% of its 180 people workforce. In May, President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning U.S. companies from doing businesses with Huawei. The U.S. claims Huawei's equipment poses a threat to its national security. However, they have not produced any evidence to support these claims. And with that, we end our news brief. But you can find all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to join us on social media as well. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.